Well, hello, children. This is Pastor Daniel at Church of the Redeemer. And for this fall, since we can't be in our church building to do discipleship hour, we're just going to do these videos every week. And we're going to have story time with Pastor Daniel. Isn't that great? Hopefully you're excited about it. This should be fun. We'll see what happens. But I'm excited to do this actually. So we're going to read one of my favorite books. In fact, this book we're going to read together this fall. More copies of this book have been sold in the world except for one other book. The one book that's been sold the most in the history of the world is the Bible. The second most sold book is this one. It's called The Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan. And this is a pretty cool looking book, isn't it? I got this, I think about maybe 10, 12 years ago. And I've actually never read through this version or this copy of Pilgrim's Progress. I have some other copies, but I'm excited to read through this one because this is just a really beautiful edition. And so Pilgrim's Progress, in case you don't know, was written by a guy named John Bunyan in the 1600s. So that's almost 400 years ago. That's a long time ago. And John Bunyan, he was a well-known preacher and pastor in his day. And he actually would go to jail. He would be imprisoned because he was preaching about Jesus. And the government at that time, they did not want him to preach about Jesus. But he still said, I'm going to preach about Jesus. So he preached about Jesus. And he suffered for his faith. But he still remained faithful to Jesus. And he wrote this book called The Pilgrim's Progress. And this is a story that basically is about how do we not just become Christians, but how do we live the Christian life? How is the Christian life sometimes hard to live? It's hard to be a Christian. It's actually hard to follow Jesus. There's lots of things that get in our way that may distract us from loving God, loving Jesus, loving the Bible, and loving Jesus' church. And so this is a great story that captures and stirs our imaginations and our hearts to really hopefully love Jesus better. And so it's a great story. Millions of people, millions of children just like yourself have either heard this story read to them or they've read it themselves many times over. So I'm happy to read this to you. So I hope you have a good time doing this. We're just going to look at chapter 1 this week. And maybe we'll do a couple more chapters next week. So let's get started. The Pilgrim's Progress, chapter 1. As I walked through the wilderness of this world, I lighted on a certain place where was a den, and laid me down in that place to sleep. And as I slept, I dreamed a dream. I dreamed, and behold, I saw a man clothed with rags, standing in a certain place with his face from his own house. A book was in his hand, and a great burden upon his back. I looked, and I saw him open the book and read therein. And as he read, he wept and he trembled. And not being able longer to contain, he brake out with a lamentable cry, saying, "What shall I do?" In this plight, therefore, he went home and refrained himself as long as he could, that his wife and children should not perceive his distress. But he could not be silent long, because that his trouble increased. Wherefore at length he brake his mind to his wife and children, and thus he began to talk to them. "O my dear wife," said he, "and you the children of my bowels, I, your dear friend, am in myself undone by reason of a burden that lieth hard upon me. Moreover, I am certainly informed that this our city will be burned with fire from heaven, in which fearful overthrow both myself with thee, my wife, and you, my sweet babes, shall miserably come to ruin, except, the which yet I see not, some way of escape may be found, whereby we may be delivered." At this his relations were sore amazed, not for that they believed what he had said to them was true, but because they thought some frenzied distemper had gotten to his head, so they thought he was crazy. Therefore, it drawing towards night, and they hoping that they might the sleep might settle his brains, with all haste they got him to bed. But the night was as troublesome to him as the day. Wherefore, instead of sleeping, he spent it in sighs and tears. And so when the morning was come, they would know how he did. He told them worse and worse. He also set to talking to them again, but they began to be hardened. They also thought to drive away his distemper by harsh and surely carriage to him. Sometimes they would deride, sometimes they would chide, and sometimes they would quite neglect him. Wherefore he began to retire himself to his chamber to pray for and pity them, and also to condole his own misery. He would also walk solitary in the fields, sometimes reading, sometimes praying, and thus for some days he spent his time. Now I saw, upon a time when he was walking in the fields, and that he was, as he was wont, reading in his book, and greatly distressed in his mind. And as he read, he burst out, as he had done before, crying, "What shall I do to be saved?" I saw also that he looked this way and that way, as if he would run, yet he stood still, because I perceived he could not tell which way to go. I looked then and saw a man named Evangelist coming to him, who asked, "Wherefore dost thou cry?" or "Why are you crying?" He answered, "Sir, I perceive by the book in my hand that I am condemned to die, and after that to come to judgment, and I find that I am not willing to do the first, nor able to do the second." "Then," said Evangelist, "why not willing to die, since this life is attended with so many evils?" The man answered, "Because I fear that this burden that is upon my back will sink me lower than the grave, and I shall fall into Tophet. And, sir, if I be not fit to go to prison, I am not fit to go to the judgment, and from thence to execution, and the thoughts of these things made me cry." But then said the evangelist, "If this be your condition, why do you stand still?" And he answered, "Because I know not where to go." Then he gave him a parchment roll, and there was written on it, "Fly from the wrath to come." And the man therefore read it, and looking upon the evangelist very carefully, said, "Where must I fly?" Then the evangelist, pointing his finger over a very wide field, "Do you see yonder the wicket gate?" The man said, "No." Then said the other, "Do you see yonder shining light?" He said, "I think I do." Then said the evangelist, "Keep that light in your eye, and go up directly thereto, so shalt thou see the gate, at which when thou knockest it shall be told to thee what you shall do." So I saw in my dream that the man began to run. Now he had not far to run from his own door, before his wife and children, perceiving it, began to cry after him to return. But the man put his fingers in his ears and ran on, crying, "Life, life, eternal life." And so he looked not behind him, but fled towards the middle of the plain. The neighbors also came out to see him run. And as he ran, some mocked, and others threatened, and others cried after him to return. And among those that did so, there were two that were resolved to fetch him back by force. The name of the one was Obstinate, and the name of the other was Pliable. Now by this time the man was got a good distance from them, but however they were resolved to pursue him, which they did, and in a little time they overtook him. Then said the man, "Neighbors, where are you from?" And they said, "To persuade you to come back with us." But he said, "That can by no means be. You dwell," said he, "in the city of destruction, the place also where I was born. I see it to be so, and dying there, sooner or later you will sink lower than the grave into a place that burns with fire and brimstone. Be content, good neighbors, and go along with me." "What," said Obstinate, "and leave our friends and our comforts behind us?" "Yes," said Christian, for that was his name, "because that all which you shall forsake is not worthy to be compared with a little that which I am seeking to enjoy. And if you will go along with me and behold it, you shall fare as I myself. For there where I go is enough and to spare. Come and prove my words." Obstinate, "What are the things you seek, since you leave all the world to find them?" And Christian said, "I seek an inheritance incorruptible, undefiled, and that fadeth not away, and is laid up in heaven and safe there, to be bestowed at the time appointed on them that diligently seek it. Read it so, if you will, in my book." And Obstinate said, "Tush, away with your book. Will you go back with us or no?" "No, not I," said Christian, "because I have laid my hand to the plow." "Come then, neighbor Pliable, let us turn again and go home without him. There is a company of these crazy-headed cockcombs, where they take a fancy by the end, are wiser in their own eyes than 7 men that can render a reason." "Then," said Pliable, "don't revile if that is what the good Christian says is true. The things he looks after are better than ours, and my heart inclines to go with my neighbor." "What? More fool still? Be ruled by me and go back. Who knows whether such a brain-sick fellow will lead you? Go back, and be wise." "Nay, but do thou come with thy neighbor Pliable. There are such things to be had which I spoke of, and many more glories besides. If you believe not me, then read here in this book. And for the truth of that which is expressed therein, behold, all is confirmed by the blood of him that made it." "Well, neighbor Obstinate," said Pliable, "I begin to come to a point. I intend to go along with this good man, and to cast in my lot with him. But, my good companion, do you know the way to this desired place?" "I am directed by a man whose name is Evangelist, to speed me to a little gate that is before us, where we shall receive instructions about the way." "Come then, good neighbor, let us be going," said Pliable, and then they both went together. "And I will go back to my place," said Obstinate. "I will be no companion of such misled, fantastical fellows." And there ends chapter 1. So we have Christian, who's going on this journey. He's going to the eternal city, which we know as heaven. And there's a man called Evangelist who's trying to point him to that good news of the gospel of Jesus. But on the way, he meets these 2 guys, and one's pretty nice, Pliable, and the other one, Obstinate. Well, he's obstinate. He is stubborn. He's rejecting the ways of Jesus and trying to stop even his friend Pliable from going with Christian. But thankfully, Pliable goes along with Christian, and they're hopefully on their way to the heavenly city. So that is chapter 1. Maybe we'll do a couple more chapters next week, but I just want to jump into just one chapter this week and get our feet wet. Hope you enjoyed the story. Hope you come back next week and read more with me. Take care, and God bless.